You can't be neutral to IBB's voice on national issues.
At his own time, this country was very united.
He had friends across the country.
He was very open-minded.
He's been a guide.
We've done well for Nigeria.
When you see him and say, Wale, are you all right?
Release those properties, gazette them, and I will sign.
It was a job I had to do.
Deliberate, cerebral, and focused, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida is not a historical accident. His years as a leader were years of decisiveness and breathtaking reforms. Indeed, years of considerable and outstanding courage. The Babangida years are captured in Nigeria's history as a time when one man courageously stepped forward in an honest attempt to change the status quo and challenge a tradition of timid leadership and inconsistent state policies. With a rare gift of foresight, statesmanship, and calmness, IBB's rare combination of boldness and compromise redefined and re-engineered governance in Nigeria. This documentary, entitled Ibrahim Babangida, A Life of Vision, Courage, and Reform, is a conscious attempt to document a critical phase in Nigeria's historical journey as a nation still in search of the soul of its nationhood. Born on August 17, 1941 in Mina, in today's Niger State, to Aisha and Muhammad Babangida, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida received early Islamic education before attending primary school between 1950 and 1956. He later enrolled at Government College Bida, Niger State, for his secondary education. The young Ibrahim Babangida's ambition was to become a civil engineer. However, different career guidance options by the northern establishment compelled him to enroll into the Nigerian Army in 1962. Ibrahim listened to the wise counsel of his forebears and enlisted in the Nigerian Army. Barely 5 years into the military career, there was the Nigerian Civil War, which began in 1967. The call to national duty is perhaps the most memorable task in General Babangida's military career.
I went to war in 1967. What struck me was, here am I. I knew a lot of colleagues with whom we trained together, with whom we schooled together. Now here am I facing them in war. I never imagined that I will find myself in a situation of war with people who have been my friends, who unfortunately were on the other side. Well, I think I did because it was a job I had to do. And maybe it is a job that they on the other end have to do. But I found that really, really very touching moment in my life.
In 1969, a few months to the end of the Civil War, Babangida married Mariam. They remained married until her sudden painful passage in December of 2009. The marriage produced 4 children: Aisha, Muhammad, Aminu, and Halima. On record, General Murtala Muhammad, as head of state, was determined to leave a legacy in Nigeria and his constituency, the military. Murtala Muhammad embarked on a program of demobilizing the military barely 5 years after the Civil War. He found no better candidate for the assignment than the gap-toothed young officer. Babangida was appointed head of the Demobilization Committee by the then Chief of Army Staff, General Theophilus Danjuma. That appointment marked another major professional assignment for Ibrahim Babangida. Unfortunately, just at the nick of submitting the demobilization report, another rumpus occurred. Lieutenant Colonel Dimka was on national radio to announce the overthrow of the young administration of General Murtala Muhammad. That was on February 13, 1976. The dangerous task to flush out the military adventurers fell on Ibrahim Babangida's shoulders.
So when I got into the army headquarters, I went up and people were saying, "Where have you been? We are looking for you." I didn't know, quite frankly, what was happening at that time. So I looked at my watch and I said, "No," but I wasn't late. The conference was supposed to start at 9 o'clock. Then they said, somebody said, "Didn't you hear?" And it was, so I went up to go to see the Chief of Army Staff, General T.Y. Danjuma. He said, "Ibrahim, where have you been? We have been looking for you." I said, "We are not late, sir." So he said, "Didn't you hear what happened?" I said, "No." He said, "Dimka, there was a coup d'etat. I want you to go and flush him out."
He decided to apply minimum force. He confronted Dimka unarmed. Typical of the charismatic IBB, he accomplished this task and earned an enduring accolade for his gallantry. The coup was foiled, even though it claimed the life of General Muritala Muhammad.
I moved along to go to Ikeja. A lot of thoughts were coming into my head at that time about whether my troops were loyal or what am I going to find at that time, and so on and so forth. Fortunately, I had very good soldiers at that time, 4th Regiment. They were very loyal. They were very, very, very loyal indeed. So I went into the cantonment. I had no problem whatsoever getting into the cantonment to go and join the troops.
The military secretary at the time, Colonel Muhammad Gadonasco, said of Colonel Babangida, "This officer, at the greatest risk to his personal safety and the nation, in particular, confronted the leader of the attempted coup." On December 31, 1983, the military struck again. This time, the democratically elected government of President Shehu Usman Aliyu Shagari was ousted from office. Major General Muhammadu Buhari became head of state, and Ibrahim Babangida assumed the office of Chief of Army Staff. He was a member of the Supreme Military Council, the highest decision organ of the military government. Barely 20 months into the government of General Buhari on August 27, 1985, Nigerians woke up once more to the familiar but eerie sound of martial music. This time, no one was particularly excited, especially after the trauma of the uninspiring presidency of Shehu Shagari and the authoritarian regime of Buhari and Idi Agbon. It was to a nation in despair that Brigadier General Sani Abacha announced a change in its leadership. Abacha's reasons did not differ fundamentally from what he had earlier broadcast in 1983, having heralded the December 1983 coup that brought Major General Muhammadu Buhari to power. Brigadier Joshua Dogonyaro would later come on air to explain the rationale for this sudden change in government. Major General Ibrahim Babangida was subsequently announced as the head of the new government.
I will tell you a story. One of our seniors, Ibrahim Tayo, colonel who died during the same Dimka coup. One day we were traveling and he saw some junior officers reading a book, How to Stage a Coup. And Ibrahim Tayo was a very brilliant person and he's well read. So he got the book out of the hand of the young officer. He said he gave him a chapter in the book. He said, make sure you recite this chapter, get it into your brain. And I didn't know then. So I said, what did you tell? Why? What chapter is it? Then he gave me the book. I saw the chapter, The Consequences of Failure. He said they should read it very well and understand it. And always I was remembering that story, the consequences of failure. So you find those of you involved are going to be killed. Those of you who connived will also be killed. everybody will be killed once it fails. So those are things that I keep on remembering. And so we had a meeting on the 30th of December, I think, and we were well coordinated. We were always in contact. I was in contact with David Mark here in Mina and so on, but because he was the governor of the state. And what was paramount in our minds was that there shall be no blood whatsoever. And I'm glad to say that the soldiers were well disciplined, the officers were well trained and well led, and we carried that to the letter without any blood whatsoever.
In a classic demonstration of uncommon leadership, the new military leader adopted the novel title of military president. In his maiden broadcast as president on August 27, he gave expression to his civil disposition. President Babangida expressed the readiness to unite the country.
I'm pleased to take this opportunity to declare once again, therefore, that this administration attaches the greatest importance to constructive and helpful criticisms as well as the freedom of the press, and to declare further that the administration also attaches the greatest importance of fundamental human rights. A visible improvement in the standard of living of our people will not come overnight, of course. It is nonetheless feasible to take a meaningful action now which would alleviate the deprivation and misery of the large majority of our population within a short time. Thus, the administration will, in particular, take measures to check our galloping inflation and soaring unemployment. Part of these measures may require a review of our ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund and our current debt servicing ratio. And I trust that we will be able to count on the goodwill of your countries and organizations on this issue.
General Babangida is perhaps the most prepared of past and present Nigerian leaders. For instance, it took less than 2 weeks for the Babangida government to constitute its cabinet on assumption of office. His appointees, most of them civilians, remain the best crop of Nigerian intellectuals in public office.
You are all aware of the circumstances which led to the change in the leadership of the government of this country, and I need not to repeat it here. Let me first of all congratulate all of you for a well-deserved appointment as members of the Armed Forces Ruling Council, a body which now replaces the former Supreme Military Council as the highest ruling organ of government. Your selection was made on your personal merit and experience, and not because you represent sectional or particular geographical areas of the country. I hope, therefore, that you will justify the confidence reposed in you. As members of the highest ruling organ of government, you are directly in the focus of the keen and watchful eyes of the public for your conduct of public affairs, your utterances, and general behavior. I, therefore, expect of all of you at all times loyalty, good conduct, and exemplary leadership qualities. I equally expect of you to be above board and render selfless service to the nation.
The economic blueprint of the IBB years remains one of the finest the country has ever had. His economic reconstruction policy was in tandem with the International Monetary Fund, IMF.
We told the country that this program is not going to be an easy program. It is going to be tough. But we appreciated the resilience of the Nigerian people. And we counsel that if they work hard, the program will be very, very beneficial to each and everybody in the country. But if we decide to break down or to succumb to the pressures of the reform, then we are not going anywhere. I was honest enough to say it because I realized that it is not going to be easy. And I'm glad that people realize it later after going through some of this. People who stood firm to do what we were trying to do, let's say in privatization, for example, they are now today some of our successful captains of industries in this country.
His economic liberalization policy set the tone for the process of divesting government's interests in business, enterprises, and corporations. The policy led to the privatization of state-owned enterprises in line with global trends. Babangida's administration brought about the deregulation of broadcasting in Nigeria in 1992.
After about 50 years of radio and television broadcasting in Nigeria, and where it was only government monopoly, he decided in his wisdom to allow private ownership. And that is where people like me also had an opportunity again to show interest and invested in the first private radio, invested in the first satellite television broadcasting in Nigeria, and distributed the signals across the whole continent of Africa and globally.
He established the Federal Road Safety Commission to reduce carnage on our roads and solicited the support of Professor Wole Soyinka to drive the process as pioneer chairman. In infrastructure, the IBB years birthed some of the country's most ambitious and life-transforming projects.
The Ajaokuta steel complex, which was abruptly truncated when there was a change of government in 1983. When President Babangida came back in 1985, 2 years had lapsed. It was with a little bit of struggle and with a lot of damage already done by that truncation over a period of over 2 years to resuscitate the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill, and went ahead to try to complete, as at the time he was leaving office, Ajaokuta was already over 90-95% completed.
The third mainland bridge in Lagos, stretching over 11.8 kilometers, which was once the longest bridge in Africa, linking mainland Lagos to Lagos Island, Nigeria's commercial nerve center, was completed by President Babangida. General Babangida took Nigeria on a journey of fundamental political reengineering. He set for himself the task of bringing about a new political culture. He was in constant touch with the people. He preached attitudinal change and patience. He appealed to the understanding and the buy-in of the people to his policies and programs by deploying his charisma and power of persuasive presentation.
I was very much in contact with the general feelings within the society. I have friends that come across or cut across the entire spectrum of the society. I was interested in governance generally. So I'm always in contact with people who are affected by governance.
A transition timetable was drawn up, setting the terminal date of military disengagement for 1992. The timetable was designed to establish a gradual and graduated learning political process with the ultimate result of establishing a new political culture. The National Republican Convention, NRC, was referred to as a little to the right, and the Social Democratic Party, SDP, which was a little to the left, emerged. His ultimate intention was to wrest political power from those he described as moneybags and make Nigerians equal founders and equal joiners. The presidential election pitched Mashood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, MKO of SDP, against Bashir Tofa of the NRC. Nigerians trooped out on June 12, 1993, shunned ethnic and religious sentiments, and voted overwhelmingly for the man they thought was best suited for the job. Across the world, the June 12 presidential election is still measured as the freest and fairest that Nigeria ever had. June 12 marked a watershed in Nigeria's politics. It became the determinant of power configuration in the country. Was the annulment a political miscalculation on Babangida's part or a courageous error?
A lot has been said about June 12, and people perceive it on different platforms. I knew the feelings within the military establishment, and we wanted to hand over then a country or an armed forces that is not coup prone. We wanted to establish an excellent civil-military relation where a democratically elected government takes care of the country and subordinate the armed forces under the constituted authority elected by government, just like it was during the First Republic. All these are what is working on our minds when we had that annual June 12. So I knew the feeling of the military at that time. Another coup was imminent at that time. I had the information, I have the documents, I confronted some of all. And I thought it's not fair again to plunge the country into another thing. We succeeded in carrying out a coup which was bloodless, and then we carry out another one, which I think is going to be bloody and tribalistic. So that is, we are showing the discord of a very fragile Nigeria, a Nigeria that was not the dream of our founding fathers. And we had no alternative but to resist the pressure. Do it this way. Oh no, it's because of this. I had all sorts of things about this, but we were determined. We knew the country should be first. It's just the purpose is to save the country. And I'm glad we still have a country.
Chidi Amuta is the author of Prince of the Niger. He agrees that the June 12 election debacle is not a pleasant experience, but insists lessons have been learned.
Babangida was fully in support of his friend Abiola in terms of go for the presidency. And one of his happiest experiences was the fact that Abiola was going to defeat Tofa. But in terms of the drama of the high moment, it seems to me that his acknowledged political savvy is, deserted him at a critical moment. As an observer from very close quarters, the only thing I would like to say to Nigerians is that at a critical moment, there were so many forces at play, so many contradictory forces were at play. There were factions within the military that did not wish the June 12 election well. There were factions within that same military who did not wish Babangida's political transition well. There were also factions that did not wish Abiola well. So the challenge of managing these factions to ensure that we continue to have peace and not a bloodbath was perhaps overwhelming. There would have been coups directed at Babangida, coups directed at Abiola. All kinds of coups were in the making. So those who just, come with blank condemnations are not aware of the intricacies of what could have been. People should also try and find time to reflect. What if Babangida was assassinated? What if Abiola was assassinated prior to swearing in? What if? It wasn't a pleasant thing. The annulment of June 12 election was a pleasant experience for anybody. I don't think it was for Babangida.
Despite the enormous task it faced building a new Nigeria, the Babangida administration also played significant roles in the liberation movements in South Africa and Angola. Nigeria, under Babangida, played an active role in the peace process across the world.
Differences continue. Disillusionment may arise with democracy in the face of persistent and extreme economic hardship, side by side with the restructuring of the political process.
Nigeria was involved in restoring peaceful relations between Chad and Libya, between Burkina Faso and Mali. Nigeria took the front stage to resolve the misunderstanding between Liberia and Sierra Leone and the deep-seated economic and political problems between Ghana and Togo, just as it pushed for Morocco to return to the Organization of African Unity, OAU. His vision for Nigeria was more cohesiveness and accelerated national integration, a self-reliant and rapidly developing economy that can hold its own and contribute to the scientific and technological progress of mankind, the emergence of a stable political order, Nigeria's emergence as a leading member of an increasingly integrated West African sub-region, and a respected member of the world community. In 8 years, between 1985 and 1993, the IBB audacity assumed the central topic for discussion in national life and the international community. Without a doubt, he had the presence of a typical dictator, yet he maintained the modesty of a gifted statesman in a democracy. The Babangida era was a long period of travails for himself and the Nigeria he sought to build. This was so because he chose to confront Nigerians with complex realities rather than easy options. Typically, most Nigerians choose to remember the travails of the period that when Nigeria stood out among the Committee of Nations in the life of the IBB administration. Some Nigerians have forgotten how the country's unique relationship with the outside world blossomed. He brought to an end the indiscriminate detention of journalists and citizens by abrogating Decree 2 and 4 of his predecessor. He brought to an abrupt end the endless jail terms imposed on politicians of the Second Republic. With the benefit of hindsight, perhaps the most glorious moments of the Babangida era were the first few months into his administration. IBB brought a refreshing alternative to the draconian style of his immediate predecessors. In the same vein, political prisoners and other persons held in different detention camps were released. IBB declared an economic emergency and embarked on economic diplomacy. He abolished a law which previously made foreign exchange transactions an offense. This was on October 29, 1985. Persons convicted under the Exchange Control Anti-Sabotage Decree were immediately set free. Worthy of mention was the movement of the federal capital from Lagos to Abuja, when President Ibrahim Babangida signed the legal instruments under which Lagos ceased to be the capital of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. By this singular act, IBB actualized the process started by General Murtala Muhammad in 1975. Never before in the history of Nigeria has any leader made a conscious effort to bring national and economic issues to the level of ordinary Nigerians. This was the hallmark of the IBB era. He had a good reputation for economic management. He was a meticulous planner and always a step ahead of his adversaries. He was a formidable military officer who was not afraid to take tough decisions. He was, and still is, a kind-hearted Nigerian who understands the intricacies of Nigeria's multi-ethnic configurations.
When General Chukwuemeka Odumegwu came back from exile, part of the understanding with him was that they will release his father's properties. The properties belonging to Ojukwu Transport Limited. Now, there were 19 properties, 19. 14 of them were in Ikoyi. 4 were in GRA Apapa. And 1 was in Yaba. So I went to General Guzo, who was the NSA. And I said, General, I don't think this country has been fair to the Ojukwu family. He says, why? I said, this man came back. They promised him to return the father's properties to him. They didn't. If it's punishing Emeka Ojukwu that the country wants to do, the property does not belong to Emeka Ojukwu. The property belongs to his father, who actually even helped this country at a point in time when they were in need. This was November 1992. We came to Abuja. And the general took me to President Babangida. And he says, we will release the properties. Now, between November 1992 and August 20th, 1993, the properties were gazetted, and he signed them on the 24th of August, 1993. So from November to August, it was a question of about 9 months. All the properties belonging to Ojukwu Transport Limited was released. So you can see the kind of person that President Babangida is.
He remained a lovely husband to his adorable wife until death separated them. He remains a dependable ally and confidant to his children.
He loves to hear what is going on, even things that I tease him about, I mean, there's a private joke that we have that I've driven all his girlfriends away because I look after him so well. And then I tell him that if they're so serious, they won't run away, So he has the biggest sense of humor you can ever imagine. But you have to be very careful because it's a smart sense of humor because you could be taken off guard with what you say. Whenever I talk to him or talk about him, I have a smile on my face because he has really helped mold who I am today. He has taught me so many things and values instilled in me, but above everything, he has taught me to be extremely patient and extremely tolerant, and it is helping me today.
General Ibrahim Babangida may be a victim of the unintended consequences of the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. Still, his achievements stand him out as a visionary leader who made a remarkable and an enduring impact on the evolution of a modern Nigeria.
Excellent. How are you? Good. Thank you.
Even now, the Babangida phenomenon has become a benchmark for assessing leaders before and after him. He is acknowledged as a vital force in Nigeria's history.
I remember that for him to have achieved what he achieved and the way he's regarded in society, it reminds me that now I have to compose myself. It reminds me that I have to imbibe empathy in me as well. He's a man of a heart. He has a huge heart, and he's forever loyal to his friends.
At his own time, this country was very united. Every area, the young people were hoping and they were encouraged to participate actively. But today, it is the government itself that goes around the whole world to inform the world that Nigerian youths are indolent, they are corrupt, they are criminally minded. They are the ones demarketing. This was something that did not happen during the IBB years.
The Babangida era remains a crucial and essential part of the narrative of the Nigerian nation state and space.
There was a military officer called Ibrahim Babangida who grew up and joined the army, and he was able to serve when the country and the army needed him at the most important time in the development of this country.